Congratulations to the father of the bride, Simo, there behind Regine and Paul Bowen. Gene Klinger just had a wedding last night, and Becky Klinger, a member of our congregation, got married. And I know it was it must have been a very, very long but very joyous day for the Klingers. But I'm impressed, Gene, that you're here this morning. Confirmation, although it's a second service, it's a good rehearsal of what it means. Confirmation means confirming or reaffirming your baptismal vows. Young people, when they reach a certain age, are able to profess their faith on their own, as these young people did to the session last Tuesday night and were subsequently received into membership. Our young people on Tuesday night did a tremendous job explaining they have stoves that were prepared by one of our members, Emily Mark. They did a tremendous job explaining the symbolism and the significance of their individual stoves, and they also did a great job explaining what they think to be in the future their continued mission and their involvement in church and their hopes for their general involvement in the life of the congregation. And so we gather around this table this morning to not only recall Christ's atoning sacrifice for us, but we also celebrate this significant event in the lives of our young people. As a Christian life is for all of us a journey, a trip that never crosses the finish line, but instead a race that never ends. Our young people are at the beginning of their race to please God and to lead a life of significance. The race wasn't over for the Apostle Paul until he ended up a prisoner in Rome, preparing himself for execution. I have fought the good fight, you've heard his word before. I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Wouldn't many of us like to have that same kind of valedictory on the occasion of our passing? And it would be interesting to note on this special Sunday the path of the young prophet, Jeremiah, who initially expressed shock and disbelief that the Lord called him, a young man, to be a prophet to all the nations. I do not know how to speak, because I am only a youth, answered the young Jeremiah. Then the Lord quickly responded, do not say I am only a youth, because where I send you, you shall go, and wherever I command you, you shall speak. Well, it seems on the surface, at least, an insuperable task for a young man, but then again, a calling's a calling, no matter what the age. Now, Jeremiah's attempt to fulfill his calling was not without doubt, was not without tremendous loneliness and frustration. He even cursed the day he was born, when nothing was going right and all the wheels seemed to be coming off. Whenever you say things that people don't want to hear, in this case, Jeremiah is speaking against Israel's immoralities and dangerous foreign alliances, there is a price to pay. But at the same time, if one stays true to his or her calling, it leads to significance. Calling leads to achievements for the right reasons. And achievements for the right reasons lead to significance. 19th century John D. Rockefeller, at one time the wealthiest person in the world, the founder of Standard Oil, and an enormously controversial person with a lineup of critics that were not in short supply, saw his calling and his purpose as creating wealth. And he was good at it. He became the world's first billionaire. A devout Baptist, profoundly influenced by his mother's deep religious convictions, Rockefeller said to his own children, you're not here just for your own enjoyment. You're here for a purpose. He would keep a meticulous ledger of the money he made, the money he spent, and the money he gave away, down to the penny. He said it was a way of evaluating himself. He would tell his family that you should distribute your fortune faster than it grows. His favorite quote of Jesus was, to whom much is given, much is expected. He saw charity as a way of remaking society, and it was manifested through him in breathtaking ways. The founding of the University of Chicago, groundbreaking medical research, investments in religion. His family started and built the famed Riverside Church in New York City. Investments in science and medicine and education and the arts. He wanted to promote the well-being of mankind throughout the world. Do not be afraid to give what your heart promises you and what the Lord inspires you, he would say to his family and to his close associates and friends. And so it is. No matter what level of life you find yourself, you can lead a life of significance if you give what your heart promises and what the Lord inspires you. You know, we concentrate a lot on achievement in our society, but not enough on significance. These young people at the next service, as well as many of us in the sanctuary, have been drawn to achievement, and we should be drawn to achievement. In grades in school, on the playing field, or in the music room, the art room, aspirations to advance in one's own chosen career. And we know, as the philosopher Bertrand Russell said, no great achievement is without persistent work. Now, although accomplishment is essential to the ordering of human life and the advancement of society, Jesus teaches us in his teachings that there is more to life than achievement. He implored his followers to live a life of significance. Don't see your personal achievements as your end goal, but set your sights to a larger purpose. And to the Christian, it simply means, as Jesus said, the Son of Man came not to be served, but he came to serve. And when this ideal becomes the framework for your life, then your achievements will ultimately lead to significance. Several years ago, I participated in what was called a career leadership conference at the Presbyterian and a Presbyterian-related liberal arts college in Western Illinois, from which I graduated. The subtitle of the conference was Living a Life of Purpose. The participants included a communications specialist for John Deere, a psychologist, a person who works in quality control in New York, an environmentalist, and a banker from Springfield, Illinois, a research and analysis person from John Deere, a lawyer from Chicago, a physician from Peoria, and a minister from Manhattan. And one of the main thrusts of the conference was to share our belief that life is more than just achievement and success. Life is about purpose. Some of the questions posed to the students were, where and when in life did you experience your deepest joy? How do you see yourself living a life of purpose? What kind of life and career do you deeply respect and value? In other words, at the end of the day, are you able to articulate your purpose? At the end of the day, do you feel as if you are on a path to significance? From the Christian perspective, yours and my significance depends more on pleasing God and not necessarily pleasing others. And once you have crossed that threshold, your life takes on a different meaning. One that is not dependent on how others view you, but dependent on how God views you. Max Lucado, pastor from San Antonio, tells a story of a little boy named Adam who wanted to be like his friend Bobby. Adam loved the way Bobby walked and talked. Bobby, however, wanted to be like Charlie. And something about Charlie's stride and accent intrigued him. Charlie, on the other hand, was impressed with Danny. Charlie wanted to look and sound like Danny. Danny, of all things, had a hero as well. He wanted to be just like Adam, the first guy. So Adam was imitating Bobby, who was imitating Charlie, who was imitating Danny, who was imitating Adam. And turns out all Adam had to do was be himself. Max Lucado continued, stay in your own lane. Run your own race. God does not judge you according to the talents of others. He judges you according to yours. We know that one's course will not necessarily be easy as you strive to carve out your own destiny and identity in whatever year you're in. The world will try, as we know, to define you in its own way. Will try to define you in worldly terms, what kind of position you have, how successful you are, what neighborhood you live, the friends you run with, the clothes you wear, the cars you drive, all those things. The temptation to conform is always great, and the urge to accumulate will be even greater. But Paul tells us very clearly in the book of Romans, do not be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. In other words, don't immerse yourself in the crowd, stand apart from the crowd. Submit yourself to the will of God, not to the will of your peers. In short, you will have to be an individual. Think on fashionable thoughts. Don't always conform. It's a lesson for all of us. The American theologian Paul Tillich said, in the courageous standing of uncertainty, faith shows most visibly its dynamic character. New York Times columnist Bret Stephens shared a story years ago, wrote about a summer intern that he hired from West Point. And she was in Afghanistan at the time, fighting the Taliban. And he said that she was as self-effacing as she was accomplished. In every generation, he said, there's a strong tendency for everyone to think like everyone else. He asked the second lieutenant what it was like to live a uniformed existence. Wearing a uniform, she said, helped her figure out what it was that truly distinguished her as an individual. Shouldn't this be one of our greatest hopes? To put on that uniform of individuality, which leads to a life of significance. You've heard a story about Charles Colson, a lead counsel for former President Richard Nixon, who spent 7 years in a federal prison for his conviction of obstruction of justice in the Watergate scandal. Mr. Colson went on from prison to found an organization called Prison Fellowship, which went on to transform hundreds of prisoners' lives. Washington Post columnist Michael Gerson, at the time of Charles Colson's passing several years ago, wrote about him and said, Charles Colson found freedom in prison. He said that it is the central paradox of Christianity that fulfillment starts in emptiness, that streams emerge in the desert. Chuck's swift journey from the White House to a penitentiary ended a life of accomplishment, only to begin a life of significance, providing fulfillment beyond ambitions. Chuck was possessed not by some cause, but by someone. And that someone, of course, was Jesus Christ. There are all kinds of things in which we can become possessed by our goals to be the best in our fields, possessed by our desire to provide the very best for our families, possessed by the want to enjoy the things that are truly enjoyable to us, but to be possessed by the love of Christ and a demonstration of his love to others. This is what will lead to a life of significance. You know, when the religious leader, Nicodemus, in the 3rd chapter of the Gospel of John, heard a story, went out into the dark of the night to find himself and to find Jesus. He perhaps at that time felt a darkness of spirit, a darkness of purpose, even though he led a life of privilege. He had probably achieved all there was to be achieved in his profession, but significance eluded him. And the words Jesus had for Nicodemus have rung throughout the centuries and generations. Unless man is born again, he will not enter the kingdom of heaven. That is, he will be on a search for significance for the rest of his life, unless he feels the power and transformation of Christ's love. At the end of the day, this is all that really matters.